This conference will now be recorded.
So this is the agenda for today's session. Clustering concepts, then partitioning methods we shall discuss related to clustering, hierarchical methods, then density based methods and grid based methods. So probably I think we might not find time for density and grid based methods. So we'll touch upon partitioning methods and hierarchical methods, and we'll also go through the coding with respect to Python, how it is done for partitioning methods as well as for hierarchical methods. Okay. So now basically what is clustering? So as most of you have heard of data science and various methods like supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning and things like that. So this clustering comes under unsupervised learning. So if you want the definition of supervised means we need to train the data. So we have certain set of data which is labeled. Labeled means in the sense, suppose you want to recognize whether a given animal is a cat or a dog. Okay, you label it as cat, the picture or the image of a cat as cat and image of a dog as dog, and give it to the training neural network for training. Okay, then later for test data you just give some sample images, and it will correctly, based on the training data that you have provided, it will correctly classify as whether it is a cat or a dog. So their training is involved. Whereas unsupervised learning, what happens, you don't have labeled data. Okay, the data is unlabeled. So normally training is not involved in unsupervised. So it what we say is it demonstrates how the data should be grouped together. That is nothing but clustering. Clustering is nothing but forming various groups. So forming these groups are based on different criteria. It can be size of the objects or similar type of data and things like that. We shall see in the further slides. Okay, then what is this unsupervised learning? It is also a mechanism for data exploration. So when I say data exploration, you want to find out the what kind of data this is. Okay, and you want to find out the pattern related to this particular data. Okay, so it is a way of looking for patterns or structures in that data that are of interest. Okay, you want to find out how many of the customers are buying printers, how many of the customers are buying a particular product, let us say laptop, from a particular website and things like that. Pattern you want to find out. How many of them are not buying any of these electronic goods and things like that. So finding the class labels and the number of classes directly from the data. So you will be finding the class labels from the data. That is what is clustering. Okay, in contrast to classification. In classification, what happens, you already know the class labels. Okay, you have a set of data which already has labels, but then you want to classify the unlabeled data. Okay, what it is label, then give it to the trained data set, and it will correctly classify as with a particular class, and it will label it as whether it is a cat or a dog, as I had told in a previous example. So labeling will be done that time. Okay, so clustering more informally finds natural grouping among the objects. So it will try to group the objects. So we shall see this particular slide will clearly explain the definition of clustering. What is natural grouping among these objects? So you can see here and this is a famous example of a Simon's family. You have all these characters. You want to group. So please understand that clustering is subjective. So when I say it is subjective, it depends on how you want to group it. Okay, you can group the objects as Simon's family. This is one particular criteria on which you have clustered or made groups. School employees, all school employees, you have put, this is one criteria for grouping. Okay, or clustering. Females, all females you put in the one category. All males you put in one category. Okay, so like this you can group the objects. Hence we say clustering is subjective. Okay, so now we will see when you want to cluster, no, you want to find out the similarity amongst the objects. So what is similarity? It is nothing but quality or the state of being similar, likeness, resemblance, or similar set of features it has. As you can see in these two, the most of the features with respect to the hair are same. Okay, so similarity is hard to define. We know it when we see it. Okay, so if you see it, you know, okay, these two are two different objects, but you want the machine to recognize it as two different objects. Okay, so now before we move on to the actual clustering techniques, this is very important. You need to find out how the data can be represented. Okay, input data to algorithm is usually a vector. Vector is nothing but a number. So whenever, as you all know, computers, when they need to process the data, we need to give the input in the form of numbers. Okay, so we will consider the representation of any kind of objects or data in the form of a vector. So vector has both value, magnitude, as well as a direction. Okay, so you can perform various operations related to vectors like cosine, similarity, trying to find out the distance using Euclidean distance and things like that. Okay, so input data to algorithm is usually a vector, which is also called as a tuple or a record. Okay, and what are the different types of data? Numerical data, you have categorical data, you have Boolean data. Numerical, as the name indicates, it is a representation of data in terms of numbers. Categorical is a representation of the data in terms of category. So for example, male female category, or yes or no is another category. So all your data will be represented in terms of whether a particular person is tall or not, yes or no, data will be stored in that format. That is categorical. Boolean is true or false. Okay, whether a particular thing, for example, you can consider if a person is drawing a salary greater than 10,000, yes or no, true or false. You can store as true or false. That is Boolean. Okay, so clinical sample data. So if you just consider some sample data, if you, for example, age is one data that you have. So you want to put it as a numerical, categorical, or Boolean. Okay, so if you want to categorize, as you all know, this is a number. So obviously it will come under numerical type. Then weight is again something which you represent in terms of a number, which is numerical. Gender, so gender is again male or female, so it comes under categorical. Okay, deceased, okay, whether a person is healthy or deceased, true or false, so that comes under Boolean. Okay, so this is the different types of way in which you represent the data. Now, why this calculating distance is very much required, and most of the algorithms in clustering make use of this. Okay, distance will give you the measurement with respect to how similar, how far a particular object is from the other object. If it is too far, you say they are completely different. If they are near, you say they are almost similar. Okay, because we are dealing with similarity, as I have discussed in just previous slides. So when you want to measure that, distance can be considered as one of the factors. So lower values indicate more similarity. For example, if you want to represent the data in terms of distance, which is a value which lies between 0 and 1, if I say a particular two objects have a distance of 0.5 or 0.2, let us say 0.2, they are more similar. If I say they have a distance of 0.8 or 0.9, they are more dissimilar. Okay, so that is how you can with respect to distance, you can measure the similarity of the objects. And there are well-known formulas which are being used in clustering technique. So the most well-known is the Euclidean distance, which is used in the clustering algorithms, even Manhattan distance in some cases. So like this, there are many other different mechanisms or distance formulas through which you can measure the distance and hence arrive at whether the objects are similar or dissimilar. Okay, and so we do not this is please remember, this is only with respect to numerical kind of data. Suppose if you want non-numerical data, then you have to think of some mechanism how you can represent this. Okay, male or female, which is nothing but your categorical data. So when you have categorical data, how do you measure the distance? You can think of some similar kind of thing. Okay, so quickly we shall see the examples of clustering applications. So in terms of applications, it is used in marketing. How in marketing it will help? See, it is nothing, clustering is, as I told you, it is nothing but forming different groups. Okay, so it will once you form a group, it will help you. Later we shall see in the slide, we'll take up a real world example and let you know how clustering will help you to arrive at some important decisions. Okay, so in terms of marketing, it will help you to develop targeted marketing. Okay, targeted marketing is you want to find out this based on the salary of a particular person, whether a person can purchase a iPhone or not. Okay, if the salary is high, above 1 lakh or 2 lakh per month, you try to target those customers, and those customers, there is a high probability that those customers would buy or purchase an iPhone. Okay, then land use, areas of similar land use. So once you form a group, you will find out which are of similar land use. Insurance, so you can find out policy holders with a high average claim cost. Okay, and then urban planning, grouping of houses based on type, value, geographical locations. Seismography, that is wherever earthquake has happened, you want to find out the earthquake epicenters and then group all those epicenters and try to find out how far the epicenters are from each other. Okay, now we'll come to quality of clustering. So clustering, if you apply the algorithms, it will cluster. But how do you judge that, okay, this is the best type of clustering that has happened to the data that is available? So a good clustering will always produce high quality clusters. So when I say high quality clusters, how do you judge them? High intra-class similarity. Intra-class similarity means, let us say if you have one group of 100 data points or data that is available, numerical data. Amongst that 100 data group, you have let us say some 5 groups. Okay, amongst 5. So when I say 5 groups or 5 clusters, each cluster will have around 20 data points. Okay, or data. So when I say it has 20 data points, each of these data points, if they are I mean, if you compare the value of one data point with respect to another data point within one cluster, the distance between those two clusters will be very minimal, and they are said to be highly cohesive. Okay, and which means that they exhibit similar properties as any other data set within that particular cluster. Okay, so that is high intra-class similarity. Low inter-class similarities, from one cluster to another cluster, the distance should be little bit far off. That is, you say this cluster is very much distinct from the other cluster from that group of 100 points. Okay, so the quality of a clustering method, it depends on the similarity measure used by the method. So as I said, similarity measures, there are different techniques. So in distance wise itself, you have cosine similarity, then you have other distance formulas and things like that. So which one you are measuring? So there are a lot of papers you can explore. There are a lot of papers which have done extensive research with respect to trying to find out which is the best similarity measure. So you can pick up the best similarity measure and then move on, instead of considering randomly a particular similarity measure for clustering. Okay, then its implementation, how it is implemented, its ability to discover some or all of the hidden patterns. So if it is able to, your clustering algorithm is able to detect maximum number of hidden patterns, then it is a good clustering algorithm. Okay, then measuring the quality of clustering. So you have what is the metric to measure the quality? As we have just now discussed, similarity is one metric. Okay, how similar one object is with another object, or how dissimilar one object is with another object. So similarity is expressed in terms of a distance function, which is given as d of I comma j. So we have the separate formulas for this based on whether you are using Manhattan distance or Euclidean distance or what. So the definition of distance functions are usually rather different for interscale, Boolean, categorical, ordinal, vector data. So what is the type of the data? The distance function also varies accordingly. So the weight should be associated with different variables based on application and data semantics. So as I said, your computer can understand only numerical type of data. So your data should be converted into appropriate representation. So when you convert it into some numerical value, we call those numerical value as weights. Okay, these weights you can represent it in the form of a vector. Okay, and then do the comparison between the objects in the form of vectors. Okay, so these are what are the major clustering approaches we shall see. So the I mean, we have various clustering approaches. I have actually put them in a pictorial representation. After 2 slides we shall be looking into it. So quickly we shall see what are they: model based, frequency based, user guided or constraint based, and okay, first partitioning method will come. Sorry, this is the first type of category, partitioning approach. In partitioning approach, hierarchical, density, grid based, and then model based, frequent pattern based, user guided, and link based clustering. So in partitioning approach, you have typically k-means algorithm, which will construct or form groups or partitions to evaluate based on some criterion. Okay, then hierarchical, it will put it in the form of a tree. Okay, it will give you a hierarchical decomposition of a set of objects using some criterion again. So you have the typical methods is Diana, Ains, Bridge, chameleon. These are some of the hierarchical approaches. Density based approaches, you have DBSCAN, optics, and this one, and again it is based on the density, means grouping of the elements, how dense a particular cluster is, how sparse a particular cluster is. Based on that you will be able to judge. DBSCAN is the most quite oftenly used with respect to density based. Grid based, you have based on multiple level of granularity, so you have different layers or levels of division over here. So typical methods are sting, wave cluster, click, and things like this. In model based, a model is hypothesized as a cluster, and it tries to find the best fit of that for the model. So you have EM, SOM, cobweb, etc. Frequent pattern based, you have analysis based on a particular type of pattern. Okay, as I said, pattern. So if you want to purchase a house in some locality, okay, that locality might be densely populated, or it is an industrial hub, hence the prices of the rent will be very much higher. Okay, but if you go to suburb area, the price will be very much less compared to other areas. Okay, so like that is the pattern. Okay, criteria. User guided or constraint, clustering by considering user specific or application specific constraint. Okay, so again, typical methods are constraint clustering. What is the constraint, or what is the major criteria on which you are forming the clusters? Link based, objects are often linked together in various ways. Massive links, link based are SIMRank, link Silas, etc. Okay, so now the same thing whatever we had covered in these 2 slides has been presented here, so that pictorial representation would be better. Partitioning method, hierarchical, dense, graph based, and model based. So in partitioning method you have k-means, k-medoids, k-modes, fuzzy C-means algorithm. In k-medoids, PAM, Clara, Clarence, these are the well-known algorithms. Hierarchical, you have divisive and agglomerative. Okay, and then in divisive you have Diana, and agglomerative you have Ains, Birch, Cure, Rock, Chameleon. Density based you have Sting, DBSCAN, Click, DenClue, Optics, Wave Cluster. So these are some of the examples of density based. Then graph based methods are MST clustering, Opossum, NN similarity clustering. Model based you have EM algorithm. Again, in model based, EM algorithm is quite well known, and ANN clustering is quite well known. And then AutoClass and cobweb. So these are the major clustering algorithm. Again, for a particular application, you need to find out what is the major kind of output that you are trying to expect, and go for accordingly. You can choose one of these techniques. So we'll come to clustering techniques. So partitioning algorithm will construct various partitions and then evaluate them by some criteria. So we will take up k-means algorithm under this. Hierarchical will create a hierarchical decomposition of a set of objects using some criterion. So we will again take up agglomerative in this, and then discuss the algorithm. So in partitioning based, just now we have discussed, you have to form groups but those group formation is based on a particular criterion. As I said, it can be all males put together, all females one group, all school going people one group. So that is the criteria. Hierarchical, what happens? You will there are two approaches in this, bottom up and top down. So you can form clusters either from bottom up approach or from top down approach. Okay, so we'll start with partitional clustering. So this partitional clustering, it is said to be non-hierarchical. Okay, and each instance is placed in exactly one of the k non-overlapping overlapping clusters. So when I say k non-overlapping clusters, what happens over here? There's a distinct separation between one group to another group. Okay, the groups are not overlapped. Since only one set of cluster is the output, the user normally has to input the desired number of clusters. So here what happens? The user should give the input, how many clusters. So based on the type of the data, you will have to do a background study of, okay, what is the type of the data, how many clusters can be formed, and give the count of the clusters. Of course, there are various techniques to choose the proper cluster number. If you don't choose the proper cluster number, you'll not be able to partition the data or group the data properly. This might lead to some kind of errors, or you might not get the proper result. That is one of the actual major drawback of this partitioning technique. Okay, so as you can see here, it is just grouping based on the total number of clusters that you give as input. So this is how the k-means algorithm works. You decide on a value for k, as I told you just now. Decide on the value of k. So what the value of k should be. Initialize the k clusters. K means it is nothing but how many clusters you want to form, how many groups you want to form. Okay, and next, initialize the k cluster centers. So cluster center is something different. You can choose, see, if you have now 4 clusters, then for each of these 4 clusters, you have to choose the cluster center. 4 cluster center. This cluster center you can choose randomly. Okay, you can choose for the first cluster 1 cluster center, the second one, second, third, fourth, like that. Randomly you can choose. Okay, decide the class membership of n objects by assigning them to the nearest cluster center. Now what happens? Now you have formed the cluster center. Now all the remaining points or the remaining data that is available with you, you need to group them based on these cluster centers. Okay, so you try to find out which point is nearer to which particular cluster center. Okay, if you have 4 cluster centers, all the 4 cluster centers you need to compare the distance of one data that you consider. Whichever is nearer, you assign that point to the nearest cluster center. Then take up the second point, compare with all the 4 cluster centers, find out the minimum, and assign one which is having minimum distance with that particular cluster center. It belongs to that particular cluster. Okay, so like this, you re-estimate the k cluster centers by assuming the membership found that are correct. So what you do, you go on. Once you do this, again you repeat. You can repeat it n number of times, so that at some point it should converge. When we say what is the converge, it should stop. Your algorithm should stop clustering. So what is that point? Converging point is nothing but when no more clusters are possible. This is the final cluster, and no more changes are made to the clusters. Okay, if none of the n objects change the membership in the last iteration, exit. So you come out. Okay, so this is the visual representation in this graph. You can just have a look at this. So this algorithm that we are executing is k-means clustering, and the distance metric that is used is the Euclidean distance. So Euclidean distance, again, it has a formula. Each of the point is represented by both x and y coordinate, x comma y, and the second point is represented by a comma b, let us say. Euclidean distance is given as square root of x minus a whole squared plus y- is b whole squared. Okay, this is the Euclidean distance. From that you go on finding out which is nearer point to the cluster center, you group it. So here K1, K2, K3 are randomly selected cluster centers. Okay, now what you should do, if you take up a particular point, say let us say 1 1 1, if you consider 1 1, whether it is this particular point is nearer to K2, whether it is nearer to K3, whether it is nearer to K1, you have to find out using Euclidean distance. Apply the Euclidean distance formula and find out. Okay, then you can group. If the distance if it is nearer to K2, you assign it to K2. Then you consider another point, let us say 1 2. So when you consider another point 1 2, whether it is nearer to K1, K2 or K3, find out. Okay, and assign it. If it is nearer to K1, you should assign. Let us say you take another point 3 1 or something, then it is nearer to K3, you will assign it to K3. Okay, so this is how the partitioning is done. Now you can see here K1, all these points which are marked in green are nearer to K1 after applying Euclidean distance formula. Then one which is nearer to K2, all these red points, all the orange points are nearer to K3 based upon the formula. Okay, so this is how, this is only the first iteration. Okay, so next iteration. So next iteration, again the centroid point will then next iteration, what you have to do, you have to find out once this grouping of the elements is done as green, red and orange, find out the mean of green, find out the mean of red, mean of orange points. Then the mean point will become the centroid. Okay, so that will become the cluster center now. So with respect to that centroid, again calculate the distances of each of these points with respect to the centroids. Okay, whichever is nearer, you go on assigning. So like this for n number of iterations you can go on doing, or till it converges you have to do. That is, no more changes are made to the cluster groups, you go on iterating it. Okay, so finally this is the grouping that is possible. So you can see all these red points are nearer to K2, then K1 green points, and then all the orange points are nearer to K3, and your centroids are marked as K1, K2 and K3. Okay, which is in gray color. Okay, so this is how K-means clustering works. So now we shall see the strength of it, and then later we'll move on to the Python code. Okay, now strength. It is relatively efficient and it is expressed in terms of timing analysis, big O of T into K into N. What is T? T is the total number of iterations, how many iterations it took to converge. Okay, then K represents the total number of clusters. N is the total number of samples, data samples that you have considered. Okay, and normally the value of K and T, that is the cluster numbers and the iterations, are less than N. Okay, N is the sample size. Okay, weakness. What is the main weakness of this K-means algorithm? It is applicable only when the mean is defined. Okay, then what about categorical data? So if you have categorical data as I said, yes or no kind of data, or anything which you represent in terms of alphabets, you need to specify. Then another major drawback is, before the algorithm starts, you have to know the size of the clusters. K, the number of clusters in advance. Then unable to handle noisy data and outliers. So this is very, very important. If the algorithm is unable to detect the outliers or noisy data, the output will not be proper. What happens is, outlier data will have a very high value, a data which is very much different than your regular data which is available in that set. Amongst that, let us say if you have 100 samples, data samples, all the values are lying in the range of 0 to 60, let us say, and one value is one or two values are lying in the range of 99, 98, 100. So this 99, 98, 100 will become outliers. Okay. And what happens when you use your distance metric and try to group those values, it will give you a very high value. Hence, these are also called as noise data. So if your algorithm considers this also k-means, that is why it is not able, sometimes it will not be able to group properly the or form the groups or clusters properly. And it is not suitable to discover clusters with non-convex shapes. Okay. So we shall start with the Python code. So now actually what I have taken this line by line, and we will go through this. Then we will go through one small video how exactly the execution starts. So before we start this Python, if you want to work with Python code, one of the best or easier method is you can go to this Anaconda website, www.anaconda.com, and from there you you install the Anaconda packages along. One of this one of the packages that or the libraries this Anaconda package has is the Python library set. So for this Python library set, in order to make use of this, you will have to launch Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so once you launch Jupyter Notebook from the list of libraries that this Anaconda package provides, you can start working with the Jupyter Notebook and start coding. Okay, so the first statement in that code that you will so each small what do you say, the IDE looks like small windows. You have individual window panes. So each of the window pane you can put the instructions and execute using control enter and things like that, and execute and see the code. Okay. So the first statement, you'll have to import all the necessary libraries. So import NumPy as NP. NumPy is one of the major libraries of this in Python, which deals with array processing. So whenever you want to make use of numbers, numerical processing, arrays and things like that, NumPy will be used. Then next you have to import pandas. So when I say import pandas as PD, so pandas also contains all the important major library functions related to manipulation of the data as such. So when I say as NP, it is nothing but an alias or another name, or instead of using every time NumPy, you can simply say NP. And instead of using pandas name, you can simply use the short form as PD. So it is nothing but an alias for PD is an alias for pandas, NP is an alias for NumPy. So it is another name for this. Then from matplotlib import pyplot as pyplot as PLT. So what this matplotlib is, it is basically used for graphical representation. So suppose you want to draw graphs, scatter plots, and any other type of graph representation of your data, so that your visualization becomes easier, you can go for matplotlib. Okay. In this matplotlib library, you can import the pyplot. Okay. So this name for pyplot is I'm giving a different name or an alias PLT. So that short form PLT means it is nothing but related to the pyplot library from matplotlib. Other than this matplotlib, you can also make use for a better visualization and coloring and things like that. You can also go for Seaborn. Okay, Seaborn is again built on matplotlib. So Seaborn, you can name it as SNS or something, rename it as SNS, and you can use the libraries related to Seaborn. Okay, basically matplotlib and Seaborn are for visual representation of the data. Then from sklearn is nothing but the scikit-learn toolkit. Okay, it's a toolkit which will contain all the algorithms that are necessary for execution related to your data science, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement and things like this. All these important libraries or APIs are present in this scikit-learn. The scikit-learn short form is sklearn. Okay, earlier it was SCI-KT-LEARN library. Now it is well known as, it has been renamed as sklearn. So sklearn.dataset sample generator import make blobs. What this make blob does is you can create your own data set. Okay, from sklearn.cluster import k-means. So just see here, Cluster is again one library which is a part of a package sklearn, and you import the k-means algorithms so that directly you can make use of. If you say k-means, you need not have to bother about any other actual implementation of the algorithm. If you had done the same thing using C or C++, line by line coding of k-means algorithm you were supposed to do. But if you just import this k-means API along with the parameters, you just feed the parameters, it will give you the output. That is the beauty of this programming language. So now to generate our own data set, we use make blobs. So make blobs is one of the functions that is made available in Python from sklearn dataset module. So the center, that is scikit-learn dataset, the center parameter. So I'll just go through this and then we'll come back to this. X, y are nothing but the data points. Data, if you want to represent in a two-dimensional space, you have X value and Y value. Okay, so the X value will have the X coordinate value and the Y coordinate value to represent the data point. Make blobs is a function when you want to create data set on your own or artificially. It is not existing, you're not considering any real world data there. Okay, this is just for experimentation, just to study how k-means works. We are making use of make blobs. Okay, n samples equal to 300. So what this n samples equal to 300 mean? You are considering 300 data samples for execution of k-means algorithm. Okay, center equal to 4 means it is nothing but the cluster centers or the total number of clusters or groups that you want to beforehand give as an input to k-means algorithm. Cluster STD means it is nothing but one of the parameters which you have to supply. It is nothing but the standard deviation for that cluster, which is a float value. It is a number between 0 and 1. So we have chosen 0.60 as the standard deviation. So standard deviation actually measures the deviation from the mean value. Then random state, you can give some number or you can give it as 0. Then plotter-scat function is given over here. So we will discuss this in the next slide. So this make blobs in detail, we have given what each of these parameters represent over here. Samples, the total number of cluster samples, features, the number of features for this each sample. So default you can consider 2 features or something. Then actually we have not marked over here. So default it will consider 2 features. Okay, feature means like as I said, height, weight, or considering whether a particular person is belongs to a particular group or not. So some feature like color of the hair, then height of the person and things like that. Then number of clusters to generate is given as 4. Then the standard deviation of the cluster is 0.60. Random state, it determines the random number generation for the dataset creation. So if you see now, initially you want K1, K2, K3. That is the cluster centers you want to mark. Randomly you have to choose. You can initialize this random state to some value. Otherwise default it will consider as 0 if you don't mention. Then this function which I had used over here, plt dot scatter. So plt is what it is a part of what matplotlib, and it is imported from pyplot. Okay, pyplot, pyplot. Okay, so it is an object of pyplot. Okay, so pyplot class, it is an object of pyplot class. We name it as pyplot.scatter. Scatter is the function name. X and the second X or Y, you can also number it, is the array which holds this sample. The sample, as I said just now. So this colon means actually consider all the rows, and the second value 0 represents consider the first column. Okay, so arrays are represented in Python starting from 0. Okay, index 0. Then the second this is plot the chart considering the second column parameter, which is represented as 1. So 0 means first column, 1 means here second column. Okay, so we have discussed this. So this is how the scatter plot looks like. So we have not yet applied the algorithm. So this is just, we are putting it on the representing the data in terms of scatter plot, just to study the behavior of the algorithm, how the data is dispersed. Okay, now we will apply the k-means algorithm. So for applying the k-means algorithm, so all of you know that whenever you have a particular model, now k-means will be your model. You have to fit the data to that model, correct? So from sklearn.cluster, we import k-means. K-means algorithm we are going to import. K-means, I'm just supplying only one parameter over here, that is clusters, initial clusters 4. So all these parameters also you can enter, and you have created x and y. The next k-means dot fit. Fit is the method which will tell you how the data is fit to the k-means model. Okay, so for this k-means model, the object name is k-means dot fit and x. Okay, so you're fitting the value of x over here. Okay, that x which is represented here, which is an array consisting of 2 columns. Okay, then k-means dot predict. Predict is a function which will do the clustering. It will execute your k-means algorithm completely. Okay, and the output is given as y k-means. It is stored in an object called as y underscore k-means. Okay, so visualization. Now you want to visualize. You apply the k-means algorithm. Application of k-means is completed now here. See, these are the important. This one, k-means, fit, predict. These are the 3 functions which you need to remember. So visualize the results by plotting the data colored by these labels. Plot the cluster centers as determined by the k-means estimator. So plotters PLT is an object of pyplot. Scatter is the function scatter plot. This is scatter plot. Like this, you can draw bar graphs and things like that using different function. Scatter is used for scatter plot. Then X array consisting of the first field and then the second column, first column and second column, and C equal to yk means holds the predicted values. Okay, and s is equal to 5 is nothing but the scaling factor. Okay, in the scatter plot, how big you want the graph to look like. Okay, if you give 100, it will look much more bigger. If you give 25 or 20, your scatter plot the size will be reduced. CMap equal to VRDIS is again another name just that is given how you want the map to look like. Then centers is equal to k-means dot cluster underscore centers. What this does is it will display the cluster centers. So we have displayed the cluster centers, and the display color for that is black. So as you can see here black color cluster centers are there. For that we are using scatter. Again we will call this scatter function centers. See, centers is used :0. Okay, for the first column the centers, and then for the second column the centers, and C equal to black. All these dots which you can see are the cluster centers. This is the scaling factor, and alpha is equal to 0.5. Again it is just how big you want the cluster center to look like. Okay, so that size of the cluster center is defined by this parameter. Okay, this is how it looks like. So we'll just see. Actually, I've also included one video so that you can see how the execution is done in k-means clustering. So this is a random YouTube video which I have taken into consideration.
K-means clustering is an unsupervised machine learning algorithm that you can use to predict subgroups from within a dataset. With k-means clustering, you usually have an idea of how many subgroups are appropriate. With a k-means model, predictions are based on 1, the number of cluster centers that are present, and 2nd, the nearest mean values between observations. Some popular use cases for k-means clustering are market price and cost modeling, customer segmentation, hedge fund classification, and insurance tools before clustering your data. And second, you need to look at a scatter plot or a data table to estimate the number of cluster centers to set for the k parameters in the model. That might not make a lot of sense to you now, but I am going to show you how to do this in practice in just a few seconds. All right, let's get some practice with the k-means method. In this demonstration,
so this is the
you are
Jupyter
going to need
notebook.
NumPy and Pandas. So we will input those, and we are also going to be using Matplotlib.
So this particular screen, as you can see here, JUPYTR, Jupyter Notebook. So the Jupyter Notebook looks like this, and there are various keys for execution, then creation of this window and things like this. So initially, we'll have to import NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib libraries. So that is what is being shown over here.
Most of this demonstration relies on Sidekiq sklearn. So make sure to import all of the library and all of the correct modules and packages within it. I'm going to type them out now. We are going to say from sklearn.cluster, the cluster module, import k-means, and then from npl toolkits.matplotlib3d, import axis3d from sklearn pre-processing module. Import scale. We are going to use that to scale our variables. And then we want to import sklearn matrix. This is going to be to evaluate our model. And we will import that as sm from sklearn import datasets. We are going to use a built-in dataset from scikit-learn, and from the matrix module, we are going to import the confusion matrix in the classification report. These are what we use to evaluate the model: confusion matrix and classification report. Run that, and then we have our libraries. Let's set our plotting parameters for the data visualizations in this Jupyter notebook. And then, as you have seen earlier in the lectures, we will call the load iris function in order to load our iris dataset. That is the built-in dataset we use from scikit-learn. And next, we want to scale the data. So we will call this scale version of the iris dataset X. And we will say scale and pass in iris.data. And then let's set our target variable, which will be y. And we are going to make a data frame. So we will call the data frame constructor, and we will pass in iris.target. For our variable names, we will create an object called variable names, and that will be equal to our iris feature name. So iris.feature names, and then let's just print out the first 10 records of our X dataset. So that's what the iris dataset looks like from the inside. Now we are going to cluster this data. To do that, we need to initiate a each 10 records of our X dataset. So that's what the iris dataset looks like from the inside.
So here scale function is used. Basically, scaling function, what it does is whenever you have very huge numbers and you want to compare one data with another data, if there is difference of representation in numerical value, one of the data set is in somewhere in hundreds and the other one is in thousands, it becomes difficult for comparison and you will not be able to evaluate it properly. So scale function is used. It will put the numbers between 0 and 1 or something. I mean, it will cut down and it will represent it in a proper value so that the comparison between X and Y could be done. So that is what the scale function has been used there, and the iris data set is available. So for that iris
now we are going
data
to
set,
cluster
this is
data.
applied.
To do that, we need to initiate a k-means object. We will call it clustering, and we will set clustering equal to k-means. The k-means function, and we are going to pass in n clusters. This parameter tells Python how many centroids to use for the clustering. And for the iris dataset, we know that there are 3 species types of irises in their data. So we are going to say that number clusters should be equal to 3. We also need to pass in a parameter for random state. So we will say random state, And this initializes the centroids before clustering and sets the seed so that you get the exact same results here as produced on my computer. Next, we call the fit method of the model and pass in our data set. So here is our model, and we take dot fit and we pass in X. This computes the k-means clustering, and what it has printed out here is a summary of our model with default model parameters, and then the parameters we set for n clusters and random state. Next, I'm going to show you how to plot our model outputs in a scatter chart. So let's create a data frame called iris_df and going to call our data frame constructor. And we are going to pass in our iris data. Let's set the column names for the data frame. Those are sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width. And let's also set a column name for out target. So we will say y.columns is equal to target. And then I run it. Now let's create a color theme for our scatter chart. So I will say color theme, and then we will make this equal to an array of color values from the matplotlib library. We will pass in the list dark gray, light salmon, and powder blue. For this data visualization, let's create a subplot that has one row and two columns. In order to do that, we will call the plt.subplot, and then we will pass in one row, two columns, and in here I'm going to pass in a third parameter to specify exactly petal plot, like you learned in the data visualization section in the previous lectures. We will plot our petal length along the x-axis and petal width along the y-axis. So to do that, we say plt.scatter, then we will set x and y. Make x equal to petal length, y equal to petal width. Remember that our target variable is the variable that contains the species label. There are three different types of species in the iris dataset, and we press target, the values in our target variable. Also, let's set a size for our markers, say s equal to 50, and add a title for the chart. We will call it ground two charts. It might generate an identical scatter plot, but this time we will color our data points according to their predicted species labels instead of their actual ones. So I'm going to copy and paste this code we used here to generate the first scatter plot. But then I'm going to change the target variable. And I'm going to say, instead, we want to color our chart according to the clustering labels, the labels that were predicted by our clustering model. So we say clustering labels, clustering dot labels, and then change the title to k-means classification. Print it out. The model appears to have predicted clusters pretty accurately, except for the fact that the clusters themselves are mislabeled. That's easy to fix using NumPy's choose function. Using this function, we can easily reassign label names to predicted labels. We will say that label 0 should be changed to 2, label 1 should be changed to 0. Say of the clustering labels, clustering.labels, we want label 0 to be changed to a 2, label 1 to be changed to a 0, and label 2 to be changed to a 1. And then we want this to be an integer data type. So we'll say as5 np.int64. Then let's regenerate our chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste the code we already wrote. But then instead of coloring the second chart by the clustering labels, we are going to color it by the relabel object. We will run that, and it looks like a pretty good fit. It looks like the k-means model did a pretty good job of predicting the clusters. But in order to verify that quantitatively, we will use scikit-learn's classification report to score the model with variable and run that. These are some metrics that you can use to evaluate the accuracy of your results. But before looking at actual numbers, I want to explain to you that precision is a measure of the model's relevancy, and recall is a measure of the model's completeness. What you are going for in machine learning is high precision and high recall. That indicates that you have highly accurate model results. So looking at the results of our model evaluation, you can see under the precision return for record 0, for all points predicted to have a 0 label, 100% of the retrieved instances were relevant. That is indicated by 1.0 here. And then for all points that were predicted to have a 1 label, results were returned as truly relevant. Of the entire dataset, 83% of the results that were returned were truly relevant. Just remember, you are going for high precision and high recall. That wraps up things up for the k-means method. Next.
So we have seen what are the major functions or APIs that are used other than what we had discussed. So now we shall move on to hierarchical clustering. So in hierarchical clustering, we shall see how how it works. So basically, it takes as input a set of points. So points are nothing but the data set that you want to actually cluster using hierarchical technique. So it creates a tree in which points are leaves and the internal nodes reveal the similarity structure of the points. So the leaf nodes will actually represent your data or data samples that you have considered, and the internal nodes will give you the similarity structure. That is, when you group each of these data points which are similar, when you draw a dendrogram or a tree, the internal nodes will give you the similarity, how similar they are. So the tree is often called as a dendrogram. The method is summarized below. Place all the points into their own clusters. Okay, so suppose you have a set of points and the points are there as it is. So while there is no more, while there is more than one cluster, do merge the closest pair of clusters. So what you do here, place all points in their own clusters means here, individual data sample itself you can consider as individual clusters over here. Then compare one data sample with another data sample. That is nothing but comparing one cluster with the next cluster and find out if they are similar. If they are similar, group them and form one cluster. Okay, that is by merging. Okay, so the behavior of the algorithm depends on how closest the pair of clusters are defined. Again, you will have to use some metric for finding out the similarity. Okay. So the merging clusters. So how do you merge the clusters? So this is the metric how you merge the clusters. So the first, this is single link. You can merge the clusters using this concept, wherein this is called a single link, and the distance between two clusters is the distance between the closest point. It is also called as the neighbor joining. Closest means the one which is having minimum distance from one cluster to another cluster, the point which is having minimum distance. In this method, the distance between two clusters is determined by the distance of the two closest object, that is neighbors in the different clusters. So you find out the distance between this point with this with this with this, go on finding like that. One which gives you the minimum value will be the closest value. So you merge those two points. Okay, and like that you go on finding out the distance with the help of min function, and you'll be able to merge the points. The second technique is using the average link. So in average link, what happens? It gives you the distance between the cluster. The distance between the clusters is the distance between the cluster centroids. You consider the cluster centroids. Cluster centroids are nothing but the mean value of all the points will form the centroid. Okay. So the distance between two clusters is calculated as the average distance between all pairs of object in the two clusters. So find average is nothing but the mean value. Mean value, you go on finding of this cluster with the other cluster point, then you merge those two, then after you remove those 2 points, again find the merge, find the average and go on calculating. Then the third one is complete link. So this gives you the distance between clusters in the distance which is farthest from the pair of points. That is, you will be using max function over here. That is, one which is farthest you consider. The distance between the clusters are determined by the greatest distance between any two objects in the different clusters, and hence they become farthest clusters, and then you merge them. So this is the criteria for merging the clusters. Most of the time this single link itself is preferred. So you can see how this merging happens. So you have A, B, C, D, E, F points, data, single data points, individual data points. Let us say they form individual clusters, or as in this example, the group of points are scattered or dispersed, and hence separate clusters are formed. And then from this you pick out one point from one cluster, another point from one cluster, go on measuring how similar they are and try to group them. So similarly we consider over here A and B are nearer. If you just apply, or visually if you just see, and then later you can also apply the single link formula and then find out. A and B form one cluster, then E and F form one cluster. Then you can see C is nearer to A and B. So ABC is merged, AB is merged with C cluster. Then you can find D is nearer. So I will group D with this cluster ABC. And next, all A, B, C, D form one cluster. E and F form another cluster, and you merge these two. So you can see that total number of actual clusters will be, if you just draw a horizontal line over here, you can find out the total number of clusters are 2 clusters. Okay, so two clusters. So within the cluster, A, B, C, D are cohesive in nature. That is, they are quite similar. E and F are cohesive in nature for this particular cluster. Okay, so you can apply the Euclidean formula for this and also find out. Then the most weakness, what is the weakness of this hierarchical clustering? The most commonly used type, single link clustering, is particularly greedy algorithm we apply. That is one which is nearer you minimum, you pick and choose and start forming the group. Okay, if the 2 points from disjoint cluster happen to be nearer to each other, the distinction between the cluster will be lost actually. So if 2 points from disjoint, that is 2 different clusters, if they are nearer to each other, the distinction between the clusters will be lost. That is, you are trying to group those 2 points, you will merge because they are nearer, but actually they are disjoint. Disjoint means they are totally dissimilar clusters, but you are trying to group them. This is one weakness. On the other hand, average and complete link clustering are biased towards spherical clusters. So spherical clusters in the sense all the data points are grouped such that they form a sphere around it, and you try to pick or choose the data points from each of these spheres. So it will not give you correct results, and it does not produce the user must decide where to split the tree into groups. Okay, some automated tools are there, but as with k-means, it is very much sensitive to noise and outliers. So as I discussed with k-means, this hierarchical clustering is also very much sensitive to outliers. Outliers means one completely offshoot, some high value data, your sample you have, you try to group it with the existing one. So there will be a lot of mismatch, or the error rate will be slightly high. So challenges in clustering: similarity calculation. Results of algorithm depend entirely on similarity that is used. So which similarity algorithm you have used depends on that. The clustering system provides little guidance on how to pick the similarity, and computing similarity or of mixed data type. So if you have mixed data type, then checking the similarity of mixed data type becomes difficult. You have to separate the data and then check the similarity. And this similarity is dependent very much on the data representation. As I said, if you have data numerically, you will do it in one way. If you have categorically, you have to do it in another method. If you have Boolean data, you have to do it in a different, you use a different technique. So you'll be clustering only on a subset of the data, and the computer should do more help to figure it out. That is, how you try to group, how the data separation happens, all that you will have to either write a separate program and do it, Then parameter selection. Current algorithms require too many arbitrary user-defined parameters will be there. So you will have to choose which is the best. So amongst those parameters, and then group it. So normally there are dimensionality reduction algorithms. One of the well-known is PCA algorithm, where a principal component analysis, which will reduce the total number of features or dimensions, and it will help you to cluster better. So that is a part of pre-processing. You will have to apply PCA and then do the clustering technique in order to get good results. So you can see a demonstration of hierarchical clustering over here. As you can see, the names which are marked in red color here in the beginning, they represent two different states within these Portuguese or Spanish thing. All these grouping or clustering is done based on lat-long position of each of the places. So one which are nearer are grouped together. So these two red places are nearer, and all the green are situated very much near to each other. So all of them form one group. All the pink colored states are quite nearer, so they are put together, and all the other blue colored ones are nearer, so they are grouped together. So this is how it helps you in grouping based upon the latitude and longitude positions of each of the countries. This grouping has been done. This is an example of hierarchical clustering. So now when you apply hierarchical clustering, it might not show patterns that are always meaningful. There might be situations wherein hierarchical clustering can give you meaningless or spurious results. This is one example. As you can see here, in this clustering, there is a tight grouping of Australia, Antigua, then St. Helena, etc. As you can see here in this, because all these are former UK colonies. The criteria that is used here is former UK colonies. Okay. However, there is a tight grouping of Niagara and India. So this is spurious data. Okay, which is incorrect. There is no connection between the two. Between these two countries, there is no commonness or similarity, which you can say, and hence the grouping has been done. But they are dissimilar, but grouping has been done. So this is another problem associated with hierarchical clustering. So hierarchical clustering, how do you calculate the total? The leaf nodes are these, which are indicated over here. And as the total number of leaf nodes increases, the number of possible dendrograms size, it goes on increasing. This is again another disadvantage. If you have huge data set, you cannot apply hierarchical clustering. Okay, the dendrogram representation cannot be interpreted properly. Okay, because there will be a lot of branches. Okay, and testing all possible trees, you'll have to use some heuristic search. Okay, so hierarchy, okay, this is again another problem. And then you can see hierarchical clustering basically is divided into two types: bottom-up approach and top-down. Bottom-up is called as agglutinative and top-down is divisive. In bottom-up approach, what happens, as the name indicates, you start with each item in its own cluster like this. Each individual item you consider in its own cluster. That is, each data point you consider as a cluster. Okay, find the best pair to merge into a new cluster. That one point with the second point, third point, fourth point, fifth point, you compare. Use one criteria, either shortest distance or any other similarity metrics, and group them. Go on merging them to form a larger cluster. In the end, you will form one huge cluster like this. As you can see here, this is one cluster. So this is one cluster. Okay, at the end. So this is bottom-up approach. Top-down, what happens? You start with all the data in a single cluster. You start with a single cluster like this. Go on dividing. Consider every possible way to divide the cluster into two. Choose the best division and recursively operate on both the sides. Okay. So you can see here, this is to measure the similarity. We begin with the distance matrix, which contains the distances between every pair of object in our database. So you find the distance. So as you can see here, between the same objects, all the diagonal elements are 0 because you're measuring with the same object. So this with the other object, the distance is 2. Okay, so you can measure. One example is given here in this slide. Generic technique for measuring similarity. Okay, to measure similarity between two objects, transform one of the objects into the other and measure how much effort it took. The measure of the effort becomes the distance measure. This is one technique which they have suggested. Like this, there are n number of techniques. You can make use of them. This is also called as edit distance or transformation distance. So you can see here the distance between Patty and Selma. Let us say this is Patty and this is Selma. Change dress color, 1 point. Change in the earring shape, then change in hair type, one point. So total distance 3 points. All completely it is changed. Hence the points you have got is 3. Distance between Marga and Selma. This is Marga and this is Selma, let us say. So change in dress color, 1 point. Earring, height is there. So both of them, they have same height. So it is 0 point over here. But here you have to consider as 1 point. Take up smoking. So this is smoking and here there is no smoking. Okay. And then lose weight, 1 point. So Marga and Selma, 5 points. So what you do, Marga and Selma, you don't group together. You group Patty and Selma. Patty is one which is in blue color and Selma is one which is in pink color. So these two you group because the distance is less. Okay. So this is one criteria. This is with, and then the same thing, it can be extended with respect to strings. I think most of you might have heard of this edit distance example. So suppose you have Peter, you want to convert it into PIOTR, PETR and PIOTR. You can see here 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. Both of these are string length is 5, 5 each. E gets changed to I. T gets changed to O. E gets changed to, sorry, E gets changed to R. Okay. So here you can see here E to T, T to O, E to R. So substitution 1 unit, insertion 1 unit, deletion 1 unit. Okay. So deletion of a character has happened. So total distance is given as 3. So here substitution in place of PE, you are changing it to what? I. Sorry. From E, you're changing it to I. Okay. Then insertion from T, you are inserting a new character O, and deletion, you're deleting what? E over here. You're deleted E over here. So you have performed substitution, insertion and deletion. Okay. So total number of units is 3. So this is the distance. So all these you can group together. Okay, so PETR you see here, and then between these two, you just see what is the difference. Here only 1 character difference, so they are very much close. You group them, and between these two, you see how many characters there is a difference. Okay, like that you want grouping. So bottom-up approach, how it works, we can see with this example. Starting with each item on its own, we cluster, find out the best pair to merge into a new cluster, repeat until all the clusters are fused together. So as you can see here, all individual items samples are considered as a cluster and choose the best mechanism. Just now we saw edit distance as one of the mechanisms to group the characters. So we are grouping individual characters like this, and then and then group it. So as you can see here, we have grouped and merged and formed a cluster. Then again, try to consider the distance between this group with the next data sample and group it. So like this, you go on grouping and you form one complete cluster in the end. This is bottom up or agglomerative clustering. Okay. So summary of clustering methods. So no need to specify the number of clusters in advance. You don't need, just like in k-means, you had to supply the total number of clusters in advance, but in here you don't have to supply the number of clusters in advance. Hierarchical nature maps nicely into human intuitive of some domains. So wherever you can map it and make analysis, make use of hierarchical clustering. But they do not scale well. As I said, As the total number of leaf nodes increases, the total number of branches increases, the dendrogram interpretation becomes difficult. Time complexity will be big O of n squared, where n is the number of total objects. Interpretation of the result is very subjective. Okay, so like this, you can see the dendrogram here. This dendrogram suggests that there are, if you draw a horizontal line across this like this, you can find that there are only 2 clusters. Okay, next you can see here outlier detection. So this particular branch, it is completely different and it is not connected to any of these 2. It suggests an outlier. As you can see in this scatter plot, there is one outlier point. That outlier point is indicated by this particular branch over here. Okay, now we'll see hierarchical clustering in Python. So what I do is this video I'll play it in the end. We will discuss the major libraries that are used, and then we'll come back to this clustering. So you can see this. We will take up one real world example. We will analyze this and then we will play this video. So hierarchical clustering on real world problem. The real world problem here is to segment the customers into different groups based on their shopping trends. Okay, we shall see what our real world data set problem sheet looks like. This is the CSV comma separated value data sheet. I'm opening that data sheet, what it consists of. So as you can see here, customer ID is there. So you can see here there are around 200 records. Remember this number. Later we'll be using it somewhere. So 200, which means that there are 200 data samples that are available with us with respect to shopping data set. Okay, next you have gender, male or female. Then you have age group. Then you have their annual income in dollars, $15,000, K dollars, 15,000, 16,000, 18,000 dollars. Then spending score, how much they spend. Okay, some trend analysis has been made. How much each what is it for $15,000? What is the spending trend? So the data is given over here. Okay, so I'll close this sheet. Are you able to see the sheet? Hello? Okay, now to cluster, what are the important packages that are available? Execute the following script to import the desired libraries. So you need to import matplotlib .pyplot as PLT, then import pandas as PD, then matplotlib inline, import numpy as np. So inline means you will be calling this particular library inline as an inline function. Next, to import the data set. So now what happens? You have seen the data set in the previous example. Okay, and you will be running this particular code. PD means it is an alias for what? Pandas. Read CSV is a API function which is available within the pandas. So I say pd.read CSV file, and this is the directory where the shopping data set is available, and I'm loading that data set into customer_data. Okay, this is the data that is available with me, the complete data set. Whatever is available, I have stored it in customer data. Okay, next, to check the number of records and attributes, execute the following script, customer_data.shape. So when I execute this .shape this particular script, it will return 200,5. So what does this 200 represent? There are 200 different rows or 200 different tuples or records, and 5 columns are present which the data set has. Okay, 5 columns represents the 5 different attributes. Out of those 5 different attributes, we have seen, all the 5 different attributes, they represent customer ID, gender, then salary, then spending, this one. Okay, so Now we want to extract only the top 5 or top 6 or a top few records and check. You can make use of this head function which is available. So customer, we have stored all the data. Please remember, we have stored all the data in customer data as per this. We have read from the CSV file, stored it in customer data. Customer.shape will give you the total number of records and total number of columns, rows and columns it will give you. And customer underscore data is the data where the actual data is stored. Dot head will give you the first few records. Dot tail function will give you the last few records of the complete data set. Okay, last few records is dot tail. So as per the head function, the customer ID, this is the extra number, numbering that has been labeled over here. Customer ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The gender, age. So you can see here 5 customer ID, gender, age, annual income, spending score. These are the 5 attributes or 5 columns that are there. So spending analysis we need to make. So the data set contains 5 columns. To view the results in 2-dimensional feature space, we will retain only 2 of these 5 columns. For our analysis, we don't require customer ID, we don't require gender, we don't require age. Okay. Later you want in your analysis, you can include it. But as of now, we will consider only 2 attributes. What are those 2 attributes? The annual income and the spending score. So if their annual income is more, the spending might be more or it can be less. We don't know. We will analyze this as per the data that is given. The spending score column signifies how often a person spends money in a mall on a scale of 1 to 100. Okay, that number which you saw in that Excel sheet, no? In that Excel sheet, whatever number you have seen represents some number within 1 to 100. 100 being the highest spender. Okay, so they have ranked it. 100 being highest, 1 being the lowest spender. To execute the script, we need to filter the first 3 columns we don't want from the data set. So I will, from the customer underscore data dot illocate is an array. In the array, you have stored this, and colon represent all the rows. And the second parameter 3:5 represents, consider 3, 4, 5 columns only. Okay, so I will be considering what, tell me? Age, annual income, spending score. Okay, but 3, 4, 5 I have given over here. So here actually we start in Python we start the array from 0. So this will be 0, 1, 2. Where are the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want only 3 and 4. So 3 colon 5 you have to mention if you want 3 and 4. Okay, the syntax used in Python. Okay, 3 colon 5 represents the column number 3 and column number 4. So okay, it will filter remaining ones and it will consider only annual income and spending score and put it into data field. Okay, next we need to know the cluster that we want our data to be split to. So we want to know the cluster, how our cluster looks like. Okay, so we will again use the SciPy library to create the dendrograms of for our data set. So import scipy.cluster.hierarchy as sch plt.figure. Figure size has been mentioned. So we will give the graph name as customer dendrograms. Then dend is the object name. Then this cluster name is given as scipy.dendrogram.linkage data and method equal to word. So this is method equal to word will give, I've explained over here, it will minimize the variation that is present in the data. So we import the scipy.cluster library. As you have seen, scipy.cluster library is given as shc. So shc, and then the hierarchy class has a dendrogram method which takes the value returned by linkage method of the same class. We are trying to explain this. The linkage method will link the data with the way word attribute we have set it. Word method is used to minimize the method equal to word tells you that it minimizes the variance of the distance between the cluster. What it means is the variance between, that is the amount of difference that is existing between one cluster with another cluster. The variance will be reduced if you mark it as word. Internally the calculations will be done. so the user will not come to know. The output of the script will look like this. So as you can see, if you draw a horizontal line over here along the blue line, and count the clusters 1, 2, and 3. 3 clusters are formed. Okay, 3 different clusters. So we shall see the output a bit later now. So from now we know that the number of clusters from our data set. The next step is the group of data points into okay, now what we will do is, as of now we have just this is based upon the input that we have considered. Okay, now we will see, we have not yet applied the agglomerative clustering. Okay, so now we will see from sklearn.cluster import agglomerative clustering. Agglomerative clustering, the parameters cluster. We want total 5 clusters. I have defined the cluster size as 5. Then affinity, so cluster size. So why we have given as 5 is, as per this dendrogram, what we have analyzed is the subgroups within this cluster 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we have considered as 5. Okay, affinity equal to Euclidean distance algorithm use. Linkage equal to WOD, means it will tell you the it will reduce the variance amongst the clusters and do the calculation. Okay, now this cluster will be the output after applying agglomerative clustering algorithm. This output you need to give it to the predict function, fit and predict. Okay, this is fit underscore predict. It will fit the data into the appropriate model, and it will predict. Okay, so the model that is used is agglomerative clustering. We are fitting the data in cluster.fit underscore predict. So data, what does the data contain? Somewhere we have seen here data equal to this data.ilog dot values. So what does this give? It will give you annual income and spending score. Annual income and spending score are only 2 attributes. 3 and 4 are considered, and this is how your output of the script will look like this. Okay, so what has happened over here is we have numbered all the clusters to which that data belongs to. You can see here all the numbers are between 0 to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 5 clusters. The 5 clusters are labeled 0 to 4. So what this means is the clustering algorithm, output of that algorithm will be the data set which will be labeled. Okay, the data set which is unlabeled will be given as an input, and data set will be labeled, which is the output. Okay, the labeled data set will act as the output. So you import scipy.cluster.hierarchy as shc plot plt.figure. So the figure size, all these are just the, I mean, you don't have to buy it. Everything will be in the Python scripting. Once you start doing, you will be able to figure it out. And the title is customer dendrograms. So linkage method equal to WOD, and you're linking the data with the method, and the object name is dend. So this is how 3, 4, 5 clusters are there. Okay, the output of the code will look like this, and this is the scatter plot data that you are given. This is the first column, and then this is the second column name. Okay, and as you can see here, output interpretation is like this. So you have what was the first column data that was available in the scatter plot. It is the what is the data name that we had considered? It is the annual income, and the second column is spending score. So annual income and spending score. So this is annual income and spending score. So spending score is from 0 to 100. Just now we have discussed 100 being the highest, lower values represent lower spending rate, and annual income is from in dollars, 20,000, 40,000, 60,000, $140,000. So like this, this is given scatter plot. So the interpretation like this, 5 clusters you can observe. The data points in the bottom right belong to the customer with the high salary but low spending. So you can see here high salary. Okay, high salary, low spending here. Okay, 120 and 140 here. The salary is high, but spending is low. It is somewhere around only the value that is assigned is only 20, 25. Okay, 100 being highest, as I said. Similarly, the customers at the top right, green data points indicate high salary and high spending. So here you can see here, green data points required represent high salary and high spending. It is somewhere around between the range 80 to 100. Okay, so high spending. So next, these are the type of customers that companies target. So once you get this, they will extract the data of these customers. They will extract the phone numbers somehow or some contact details of them, and they will do targeted marketing. So they will contact them, ask them credit cards, ask them whether you want to buy a car, you want to buy a iPhone, you want to buy something, and then they will target them. Okay, so this is how clustering will help. Okay, instead of instead of starting a new one, I'll just this density based, I have included one, hierarchical based clustering. I've included one video. You can just go through it. The same functions whatever we have discussed over here are being used over here for performing clustering using hierarchical methods.
As you know, I'm the tech pro, and today I'm going to teach you how to perform hierarchical clustering in Python with a Jupyter notebook. So this is the diagram you get when you create a hierarchical cluster, and this is called a dendrogram. And then this is the plot where the clustering has been performed at this point. So I'm going to take this out so that we can start right from the scratch to perform hierarchical clustering. So let me start a new Jupyter notebook. So I'm going to go to the file, new Python 3, and I'm going to import. First, I'm going to import NumPy as empty, and I'm going to import matplotlib, import matplotlib the pyplot as PLT. And then I'm also going to import make blocks. Make blocks is imported from sklearn.dataset. So basically, you use it to create data sets that you can use to perform clustering or cluster analytics. So from sklearn.dataset, import make blocks. All right. So I'm going to run it just to make sure everything is fine. Matplotlib the pyplot, or matplotlib the pyplot as PLT. There's no module named matplotlib. Import matplotlib the pyplot. What we are going to use for clustering. Meanwhile, let me add comments just to clarify what we are writing. So let me just say, do the necessary imports, and here I'm going to create a blob of 200 data points. Okay, so let's create this 200 data points, and then we proceed from there. So let's call it data set is equal to make. So this is syntax, make the blocks, and you specify number of data points you want. So in this case, you want the number of samples to be 200, and we want it to be just two-dimensional data. Let's keep it simple. So let's have two-dimensional data. So number of pixels is equal to 2. In this way, we can because we don't need three-dimensional data in this case. So then we have to choose the number of clusters we want. So I'm going to say centers equal to 4. And then I need to just specify that the standard deviation of these data points is cluster STD is equal to, I think, any number between, let's say, 1 and 2, so 1.6, and then the random state, you have to include this, is equal to 50. All right, so I've created 200 data points. All right, so now these data points actually is made up of two parts, data set 0 and data set. So if you view data set at this point, you'll see that it's made up of data set 0 and data set. So the data set 0, the 200 data points, and we also have data set 1, which is kind of the clusters from where they belong, but we are not interested in this one. All right, so I'm going to just extract data set 1. So let me just call it points. Points is equal to data set 0. So let's just take the data set, not really the clusters. All right. So at this point, we want to now perform hierarchical clustering. So to perform hierarchical clustering, you can import this is import specify the clusters of hierarchy. So the hierarchy is a submodel, and specify the cluster, and you have to use it. So import specify the cluster of hierarchy as SCH. Let's call it as SCH. We also have to import agglomerative cluster. So from SKLength the cluster imports agglomerative clustering. So agglomerative clustering is simply another name for hierarchical clustering. So I like to run it this time to make sure there's no error. All right, so at this point, we want to now create a dendrogram. Of course, you know that when you are performing hierarchical clustering, the key thing you want to generate is a dendrogram, because you want to start with everything in the same cluster, and you individual clusters, and you add the ones that are close together until you get everything in one big cluster. So let's create a dendrogram. Dendrogram is equal to SCH, so this SCH, which is this object we imported, dot dendrogram. So use the function dendrogram and specify the linkage. Specify the linkage as parameter to the dendrogram function. Linkage, and the linkage now takes the data set. So the data set in this case is points, and the method will either be forward linkage or forward or backward linkage. So in that way, it's called WARD, W-A-R-D. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to just put a comment here that says create a dendrogram. All right. So this is what I have. Let's try to run it to see if everything is fine. Yeah, so we have the dendrogram, but I would like to show the plot of this data just to kind of see how this data looks like in scatter plot. So I'm going to just copy I'm going to just display, because I don't want to keep typing this. So I'm going to just take out this. So let me just do a scatter plot of this data set. So it's actually data set. We'll do a scatter plot just to see how the data looks like. So this is how the data looks like when we created the dendrogram. Now we want to see the clustering, actually where the clusters are. So we want to put the centroid, if you will, the centroid, that is the center point of each cluster. We want to specify it right there. All right, so how do we do this? It happens that you can do it first. Let's assign each of the items to clusters. So I'm going to say y xc. This is just a variable. So this variable is kind of written a data set that assigns the cluster where each data point belongs is attached to that data point. So you have 2.1, 2.2, then it belongs to cluster 1. So we have at this point 4 clusters, cluster 0, cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. So, all right. So, let's say the first thing is to you do this a couple variable, so the distance between the data points. You can actually use different methods, maybe Manhattan distance, Euclidean distance, Mahalanobis, and so on. But this time, let's use the common one. Affinity specifies the distance method or metric you want to use. So yeah, let's use Euclidean. Okay. And finally, you use the same linkage, which is large. All right. So hopefully everything should be fine. All right. So this HT now performs the clustering. Now, after performing the clustering, we now have to fit the data set using this HT. So we are actually going to assign each of these data points to clusters. So to do that, I'm going to just create a new data set called yHT equal to HT.fit. So we are fitting the data set on yHT.fit and predict which clusters the data points belong to. And I'm going to say points. All right. So at this point, we have performed the clustering and we have the data points, each of them belongs to one cluster or the other. All right, so let's now visualize how it looks like. So I'm going to say PLP plus scatter points, where points yHT is equal to 0, 0. Okay, yHT is equal to 0, 0, and points against yHT is equal to 0, 1. So this is cluster 1. Cluster 1 for all the data points in cluster 1. That is what we are trying to plot. Let's say size S is equal to 100 and color is equal to cyan. So I'm going to plot this and using valid syntax. So we have points as well at this point to run. yHT is equal to second cluster at this point. So this is 0, 0, and 0, 1. This is 1, 0, and 1, 1. 1, 0, and 1, 1. The second cluster. And the color, let's give it blue or yellow. Okay. So I'm going to run it, and we have two clusters at this point. Now, instead of just typing it, I'm going to just copy and paste. So we have this should be 2, 0, and 2, 1, and this should be 3, 0. This is 3, 1, 2, and this is 3. Okay, let's give this a color of red, and this a color of green. I'm going to run everything now. Now we have the clustering that we performed. Now let's try to plot. Let's try to plot to put in the centroids in between. We want to put in the centroids at this point. So PLP.scatter. So the centroid should be, so we have, let's see. Let's see, centers. So the centers of these plots, you need to extract it. So the center is k-means of clusters. Sorry, not k-means of clusters. It's HC dot clusters dot centers. That should be. Let me just check. Or maybe I don't think, maybe this is not necessary. And we have our dendrograms designed for us as well. So I recommend you take some time to go through it, try to do it yourself to get your head around it. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave for me below in the comment box below.
So this was hierarchical clustering, and so we have also discussed real world example with respect to this. What happened to this? Okay, I think it was playing from this one. Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, madam, please.
Sir, is the screen visible, sir?
Yeah, madam, it is visible.
Something, it's getting stuck over here. So I just wanted to wind up.
Okay.
Can you see the screen now?
Yeah, it is, I mean, a blank screen, which is
Blank. Okay.
white screen, which is
I think it's taking some time. Yeah, hierarchical. Yeah,
Yeah,
here we
no,
have
it is.
stopped here.
Yeah.
Conclusion, shall we wind up, sir? I think it's almost,
Yeah,
I
ma'am.
can
Yep.
do Q&A after this. So now, yeah, conclusion. So clustering is a useful technique. 1 minute. I think net speed speed is slightly low. Internet clustering is a useful way of exploring data, but still it is very ad hoc. And good results are often dependent on choosing the right data representation and similarity metric. So it's all dependent on which similarity metric you use, and accordingly the clusters will be formed. And data also select an appropriate one. Okay, and I think okay. So Q&A, I can any questions from the audience, I can take it up, sir. You just announce.
Yeah, madam, thank you very much. So
Yeah.
the participants are free to ask some questions.
Any questions?
So dear participants, it's the time for asking questions. Okay, madam, if there are no questions, probably we can conclude this.
Hello,
Yeah,
madam.
so-
You'll be sharing the link to that coding session, that coding
yeah,
video.
sure. Yeah, coding I will, or shall I share the slides? I will,
Yeah,
the complete folder, it contains the coding part also, Python coding. Because that coding, it is very huge. I have extracted the major k-means and this one in the slides, and I put it up. And in the video, the complete details of all the parameters and functions that are used are present. So surely I'll be sharing.
in the slide, the link to the video is there.
Yes, yes. So that video is also there. So I'll have to send the complete folder along with the PPT and the video.
Okay, madam.
Yeah, any more questions?
Yeah, Madam Vani BB. Yeah. Can you please raise your voice? It is actually not audible. You have given in the chat box. Yeah, Madam Rajeshri, can you please check in
Yes.
the chat box? So,
Yeah.
Vani BB
Yeah,
asked, any current
yeah.
research problem related to clustering?
Research related, what you need to do is latest papers related to clustering, which are released in the year 2019 or 20, whatever work they have done. You'll have to take and then try to find out what is the drawback with respect to that. Only then, because what happens is there are different techniques, as we have discussed. In hierarchical itself, there are 3 to 4 techniques. Again, in agglomerative, there are, in agglomerative, there are different techniques. Divisive, there are different. Model based, graph based, there are different techniques. So what you need to do, you need to exactly do proper literature survey. Okay, and then find out what is the current work that is being done in graph based algorithm, model based algorithms, and then you need to enhance those existing techniques. Whatever drawbacks are mentioned there, you need to rectify those drawbacks. Then you can present those in the form of a paper, your findings in the form of a paper. Okay, otherwise there are lots. So you need to boil down or narrow down which a particular algorithm has a drawback, and whether it is applicable for this data set, what happens when we apply to this data set. So thorough literature survey has to be done. Otherwise you'll not be able to come out. Whatever existing algorithms, if you try to do research and put your findings, you cannot, I doubt whether you can publish paper again. So I hope this question was answered. As you can see in the screen, there are different techniques in the first few slides I have mentioned. So you need to try to find out what kind of drawbacks can exist. Somehow this display is not coming. I think internet is a bit slow. Any other questions, sir? Hello.
Yeah, madam. Probably there are no questions from participants.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, madam, for your wonderful lecture. And
Yeah, I hope it was helpful for the participants because we have to, in a short duration of time, we have to cover a lot of things. So I've tried to cover 2 techniques. Other than these 2 techniques, also there are many techniques. So I mean, if they want to do any research related to any particular techniques, latest work what is being done right now, they'll have to find out what kind of techniques have been used, whether in what way the contributions to that field can be done. They'll have to explore. So that's it. Okay, all the best.
thank you,
Okay, sir.
madam. Madam, can you
well-
please share your presentations to our
Yeah, sure, sir. I will be sending it to your mail ID.
Yeah, madam.
There's a folder because it contains videos also. I'll be sending the folder along with the presentation which has videos and the
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, madam. So
Okay,
thank
sir.
you very
So,
much, madam. Thanks once again on
Well-
behalf of participants.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you
sir.
all the participants. Madam.
I shall leave the meeting, sir. Then. Okay.
Yeah. So thank you all the participants. Tomorrow we'll join by 10:30. Thank you all.